Being a huge horror movie fan and loving John Carpenter, how have I never seen 1980s The Fog? What's wrong with me? What's going on, friends? Logan Myers here from Cinephellas.com to review John Carpenter's The Fog. And no, I'm not talking about that Tom Welling Fog remake from 2005. That movie was fucking horrendous, and don't ever watch that. Don't waste your time. I've been going through my Halloween horror movies for October, and I came across The Fog. And, you know, I remember watching bits and pieces of it when I was a kid on Monster Vision on TNT with Joe Bob Briggs, and I never really finished the movie from start to finish, but I'm glad I just watched it, and I love the fuck out of it, and it's one of those cult movies that, you know, a lot of people love, and I could see why. There's a lot of good reasons why this movie is excellent, and I want to talk about that. So this movie came out in 1980. It was a follow-up to John Carpenter's Halloween. Two completely different movies, but there are some similarities. What John Carpenter does, he creates this atmosphere, and, you know, with his horror movies, he has this force of evil, this presence, and it's an unstoppable force, you know, with Michael Myers and Halloween, and The Thing, and then The Fog is actually The Fog, where, you know, it comes into this Bay Area and it kills everything in its path. At the beginning of the film, we have John Houseman, which was the Academy Award winner from back in the day. He's a fisherman telling a ghost story to all these kids in the town of Antonio Bay, and it really sets up the overall tone of the movie. It's really dark, and it's based on these ghosts, and it really sets up the movie perfectly with giving it an eerie effect from the get-go. The whole premise is the ship of lepers, the leper colony, show up to this town, and they basically, the townspeople do not want all these lepers on their land because they have leprosy, and we know all that. So they send them off, and their ship crashes, and on the ship they have a whole bunch of gold, and the townspeople steal the gold and build what is now known as Antonio Bay. And fast forward in the film, they're celebrating their 100th year of being founded, and that's when shit begins to hit the fan. And what I love about John Carpenter films, he uses a lot of the same actors and actresses. In The Fog, we have Jamie Lee Curtis playing this hitchhiker named Elizabeth. We have Tom Atkins playing a character named Nick Castle. And if you all know, Nick Castle was the name of the actor that played the original Michael Myers, The Shape. We have Hal Holbrook that plays Father Malone, the priest in town. We have Janet Leigh that plays the mayor. Adrienne Barbeau plays the radio DJ of the town named Stevie. She's got that seductive voice. Hey, how's it going? You're listening to the radio. You know, it's all seductive, and that's how it was back in the day with radio DJs. And we have Officer Brackett from Halloween. He's in this movie, and Annie Brackett's in this movie. I mean, there's a ton of actors from John Carpenter film in this movie, and all the actors and actresses just really did an excellent job in this movie. Surprisingly, I was really impressed by the acting from start to finish. 100th year celebration of Antonio Bay, and that's when The Fog starts to come into play. You know, and just the camera work in this movie is excellent. We have Tommy Lee Wallace was the production designer. He did, you know, worked on the original Halloween, and then we have Dean Cundy that shot the movie, and he's famous. You know, he started his career with Carpenter, and then he went on to do like Apollo 13 and Jurassic Park. So he knows his shit, and it really shows in this movie with the wide angle Panavision shots, and just the photography and filming was just excellent. So as The Fog starts to come into play, you know, we have Adrienne Barbeau up in her little, she basically hosts a radio show out of a lighthouse in Antonio Bay, right in the ocean. So she sees this fog coming in, and she's like, what the hell? And then, you know, people start dying, and the ghosts within the fog looked actually really well. They're all practical effects. They're just people in costumes, but you can just see like the apparition within the fog, just like standing there. And that's another reason I love this movie, is just all the practical effects work was really well done. And it was really kind of creepy. And honestly, we didn't need CGI to bring that effect, and that's what Carpenter does well. And, less is more. And the way they shot it with the ghost and the apparitions within the fog, it always looked really well done. And it gave it really that super creepy effect of this movie that honestly, I think it still makes it stand out today in 2016. And what's funny about this is, I was saying earlier, Tom Atkins, he plays this fisherman in Antonio Bay that picks up Jamie Lee Curtis. And of course, as Atkins, we all know, he's a man whore. And not even like 10 minutes later, after he picks up Jamie Lee Curtis, they're banging. And they have this experience with the fog coming in to their place. And they see the shadow in the window, banging on the window. And it was really, really kind of creepy to see that effect. And then they're kind of wondering what the hell's going on. Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee go out to find this missing ship, and of course they come across it and what the fog has done to the ship and all the men on it. And there's a cool sequence in the ship where this dead body flails out, and Jamie Lee, the scream queen herself, belts out a. And a big part of this movie was Father Malone. He's the priest, and he finds a journal within his walls from his grandfather that was one of the early founders of Antonio Bay that came across the ship 100 years ago and found out what his grandfather and the men did to these innocent people that were just trying to park their ship on this land. But, with their leprosy, they kicked them out and stole their gold. And that's when all the hell really broke loose. And why these ghosts are coming back. They want their gold like any pirate. I don't know how much gold would be worth to a ghost, but, it's okay. They want their gold. They're coming back. They're going to kill everybody until they get what they wanted, what they had originally. And that's their own treasures. And you start to see Adrienne Barbeau's character, Stevie, the radio host. As she sees all this fog coming into Antonio Bay up from her lighthouse, she knows all the townspeople are at the celebration, and she's freaking out. You see, from her seductive voice on the radio, it turns into pure panic, and she's making phone calls to the cops and trying to get everybody out there because she knows when the fog rolls into this area, there's no way of getting out. So she's trying to warn them of what's coming their way. And, as the fog hits the town, you actually see a lot more of the ghosts, which Carpenter ended up adding after the original movie was filmed. He wasn't too thrilled with the final cut of the original version, so they went back and did a bunch of reshoots with more slasher sequences. I mean, it wasn't gory or anything, but you'd see the ghosts come in with swords and their daggers and cut the guy's throat. And I think it worked well. I think it worked to the film's advantage. The rest of the movie is the main characters trying to get away from the fog and seek shelter. With Stevie's character, there was an excellent, probably one of my most favorite parts of the movie is the fog comes up to the lighthouse and the ghosts are surrounding the lighthouse, and she goes up to the top of the lighthouse trying to get away from them, and the ghosts make their way up there, and it was just a really, really shot well from the top of the lighthouse. You can just see her fighting off these ghosts, and eventually it all goes away. And the fog was really, really cool how they did it. They used a fog machine and some fog juice, as they would call it, and dry ice. But the way that they made the fog come in and out, and it looks like it's creeping after the people, is they reverse the camera to make it look like it's following them, but it's actually not. So that was a nice little camera effect they used with Dean Cundy. And to the final sequence of the movie at the church with Father Malone and all the characters, they find out, how are we going to get rid of these ghost pirates? How are we going to, make them stop trying to kill us? What do they want? And as we find out, the cross in the church at Father Malone's church was made out of the original gold that they stole from the ship 100 years ago. So the whole way to get rid of these ghosts is Father Malone takes a cross made out of the gold and gives it to the pirate, and he's like, and you see the red eyes glow of the ghost. And that was shot really well too. You know, overall, just an excellent, fun Halloween style film. You just got to take it for what it is. For the time of the 80s, you know, 1980 especially is when scanners came out. You had Friday the 13th, you know, a lot of these gory slasher flicks. But John Carpenter, you know, stood away from that. Didn't want to get wrapped up into this gore fest. And Carpenter, in his filming style, he likes to keep it simple. Use the camera to its advantage, and making the surroundings give it that feeling of easiness and that sheer horror. And it worked. So overall, John Carpenter's 1980 film, The Fog, holds up to 2016. It was a fun film. I'm glad I actually got around to watching it. I watched the documentary about the filming of it. It comes with the Blu-ray and the DVD. It's also on YouTube if you want to check out the making of The Fog. It's for aspiring filmmakers like myself. It's worth a watch. It's like half an hour long, and you get to see what they did on set and the actors and how they made the film and all the fog and how they shot it. So I really enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. It's a great Halloween time film, and you won't be disappointed. It has all the elements that make a great horror film of that time great. So I'm giving The Fog a 4 out of 5 hair pieces. And remember, fly that W. Go Cubs! Cheese!